A very good evening to you, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you kindly shed some light on the outcome of the Consumer Protection Bill of 2012?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think in the history of this country, for the first time we have a legislation on consumer protection. Luckily, this is going to be passed through Parliament early next week. So we're very excited because it's a history in the making that since independence, Kenya will have a consumer protection bill. We've been talking about business, we've been talking about profits, but we've not been talking about consumer protection. So as the Consumers Federation of Kenya, of course, we are excited. We can't wait to see Tuesday passage of the Consumer Protection Bill 2012, which in a nutshell talks about protection of the consumer. And once the consumers are protected, of course, we believe the market will also be protected. So those are basically the highlights that we have on the Consumer Protection Bill 2012.
You know, consumer protection is also quite a big thing here in South Africa. But when you look at the consumer there in Kenya, are they aware of their rights?
Luckily, yes and no, but unfortunately, in our view, 90% of the people could be broadly aware about their rights, but it takes less than 5% to fight and protect for those rights. So we have sort of a dilemma here. People would expect to know their rights, but unfortunately, they can't fight for them because legislation is one thing, but getting the theory into practice in terms of defending consumer rights is another. Perhaps that's the reason why the consumer protection has to be fought by different organs, including ourselves.
Now, what are some of the other challenges are you facing currently while addressing consumer issues in Kenya?
We have seen a major problem where regulatory bodies have people who are doing business, but the consumer representation in regulatory bodies is either non-existent or too weak. So you are seeing a case in which players are also playing the role of referees. So one major challenge is about representation in regulatory bodies, and that can be blamed on lack of legislation, which we are hoping that the new Consumer Protection Bill to be passed into law by end of next week will be able to address and cure that. The other main challenge is the government has not been previously been receptive of the word consumer. I think it's been talking about supply side without paying attention to the demand side of business.
Now, looking at the telecommunications space, we know that counterfeit mobile phones are a big problem there in Kenya, but something is being done. We know that counterfeits are damaging the mobile phone industry around the world, not just in Kenya.
Incidentally, tomorrow we are working with an Indian company called Fimetrix. We'll be releasing the quality of service in terms of mobile service companies. Yes, we have noted from the report that a number of counterfeiting phones also affect the quality of the signals. That's one. But our major problem is that the consumer is actually being penalized. We do not support counterfeits, of course, but we're asking ourselves, there are regulatory bodies in government that should have addressed the porous borders, because counterfeiting really is a problem, but the consumer should not pay the price for having government agencies allow these products in the market, only for the consumer to learn later that they are counterfeits. In our case, we are going to spend, I think, a loss of about 7 billion Kenya shillings in trying to switch off the 2.3 million handsets by end of the month. So it's unfortunate. We are hoping that will be panacea. We have had issues, but we thought let's wait and see the magic date about switch off of the phones. But it's a major, major pain to the consumers.
Major pain to the consumers. But we have seen some relief coming through for the consumer, given the fact that we have seen inflation coming down. But that's going to filter through in terms of a lag effect. And then we also have interest rates coming down. But one major concern is that of fuel price increases, which you have a really big concern about right now.
We have a problem because, I mean, the world has moved on. We are in liberalized markets, but you have a case where you have regulators who do not own the means of production, purporting at all costs, to regulate prices. Price control does not really belong to the regime that we're in, and at best it has been seen to cause more problems for the consumer. So it sounds very good, highly political in terms of populism as a way to help consumers, but in our view, really what needs to be done is proper regulation of the market, because when you compare the energy sector and also compare the telecommunications sector, you'll find telecommunications sector is more competitive. Actually, the operators fight to reduce the pricing, and at the end of the day, today we are hoping that particular CCK, for example, is supposed to reduce the mobile termination rates. But in the energy industry, of course, we have a problem just because of regulation of prices by people who do not own the means of production.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening, Stephen Mutoro. He's the Secretary General, Consumer Federation of Kenya.